So what's up, YouTube? I wanted to talk today about a very important topic that I actually haven't brought up before. And it's the very troubling but not unexpected issue of fake black representation and fake black spokespeople within the community. There's been something pretty subversive going on in the black community, and not just the black community. I would say a lot of communities. But it's the issue of, and this issue, especially with regards to the black community, has been going on for a number of years. Honestly, it's been going on theoretically since we've been in this country, and it's simply evolved over time. It didn't exactly work the same way during Jim Crow as it worked in slavery, and it doesn't work the same way today as it worked during Jim Crow. And what I'm talking about is propping up fraudulent minority voices within the community and giving these, because they are subversive. They're subversive voices within the community, and giving these subversive voices an undue amount of attention. Okay, because what you find out is that these subversive voices, these really dangerous voices within the community, echo concepts and echo ideas that are meant to get the racists and the white supremacists who have always run this country, who have always been in this country, off the hook. It's about shielding them from criticism. It's about giving them black political cover. And like I said, this is, even going back to the time of slavery, you had planters who would pick out black people within the slave population that they could use to monitor the other black people. This is how a lot of the slave rebellions got forward, because you always had that black co-conspirator, that black collaborator that the other black people didn't know about. Okay, who would run back and they would tell, quote unquote massa or the master, or he wasn't really a master of anything. He was a planter. That's the right name to use. The correct name to use, but that's what they would have called him back then. Alert basically the planter leadership about what was going on. And that exists down to this day. Okay, so you have people like Paris Denard and Pastor Mark Burns. They're not the only ones by any stretch of the imagination. The list is actually, pretty lengthy. Fox News has a whole crew of just these collaborators. There's another C word that people like to use a lot. Coon. I have problems with that word. I think collaborators are I think that word suffices. And it's not a word that's dripping with, decades and arguably centuries of racial animus. But yeah, so you have these people who they get propped up, and the purpose of these two in particular is to give political cover to Trump. And this is going to tie into something that I'm going to mention later on in this video, and it's something that people have to be careful not to, it's a trap that people have to be careful not to fall into. But a lot of you guys, if you were on social media, it might have been on Facebook, but it was definitely on Twitter. There was a photo that was making the rounds, and of course yesterday Trump had this MLK moment where he came out and he signed a document, and the nerve of this guy to even echo the words of Martin Luther King. I mean, the irony is just stunning. And of course he had another collaborator in Ben Carson, who was up there as well, who was up there preaching about Martin Luther King too. And I was talking about this on Twitter now, because of course you guys know about Trump's shithole comments that was revealed. He didn't say it publicly, but it was revealed. Paris Denard and Pastor Mark Burns have been doing what you would expect collaborators and sellouts to do. And that is go on television and talk about why Trump isn't a racist, that they think that they can actually convince people that he's not a racist. And I don't know who actually believes that except for his base. And people like this are extremely dangerous, because there's the photo that I was talking about a second ago of these two after the signing ceremony. And it was a group of them, and they were outside, because what happened was after Trump signed the document, you had April Ryan and some other media figures, they not screaming to the top of their voices, but they were yelling out. They were asking Trump if he was a racist, because a lot of people in the media, a lot of people on social media have been spending the past 2 days calling Trump what he is, and that is a racist. Okay, that might offend some people. For that to be echoed so publicly, that we have to accept that a sitting president, not to say that he's the only or the first sitting president, but it's not something that you can really argue about. It's not something that you can really deny when it comes to Trump's racism, which is what historically a lot of people wanted to do when it comes to racism that's been in the White House. Okay, but people like this are very dangerous, because in this photo, you saw Denard, you saw Burns, and you saw a bunch of the other collaborators, Trump's little pet black crew, and they were asked questions about whether or not they thought what Trump said about African countries being shitholes and Haiti being a shithole, whether or not they thought it was racist as well. And nobody answered that question. Not a single person from that group of about, I want to say it was maybe 8 to 10 black faces, not a single one of them had the balls to answer the question. Because obviously the answer is obvious. The answer is self-explanatory. You'd have to be an idiot to think that it wasn't racist. Okay, now what I've heard a lot of people say is this was to be expected, and this isn't the first time Trump has said something racist. And that's definitely true. That is definitely true. Okay. But what you will see a lot of times, what they're doing right now to the African American community, and I need my people, I need people to listen to this and hear me out with regards to what I'm about to say. What they are doing to African Americans right now in this country is they are trying to prop up false leadership. And it's not even that Denard and Burns are actual quote unquote leaders. Nobody elected these two clowns. Okay, so these aren't elected officials or anything like that. So they don't officially hold leadership positions, but they have positions of authority. They get put on these platforms, Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, and they are allowed to echo their minority opinion to millions of people around the country. And what people have to understand is you have people around the world who are paying attention to what's going on right now. What's going on in America is not happening in a vacuum. Okay, so when we have, which is why black alternative media is very important. What I'm doing, what other people do on YouTube, even a little bit that you can do on Twitter if you have a blog or a podcast, everything helps collectively, because we have to set our own narrative on this issue. And what they want to do is they want to put the Paris Denards and the Pastor Mark Burns and the rest of the black collaborators, they want to put them into positions where people think that they represent all of us, and they do not. And we cannot allow that to happen, because what they're trying to do to the African American community right now and propping up false leadership in our community is the same thing they did in Haiti. And when I say they, I'm talking about the United States government and white supremacists within the United States government. And I'm not saying the U.S. government is the only government that does this. France does it. France is notorious for doing this. Great Britain does it. All of the former colonial powers do this, and even some of the postmodern non-colonial powers are doing this as well in modern times. You see, what they do is, and I was talking about this on Twitter, what they do is If you read books like Confessions of an Economic Hitman, if you read books like The Shock Doctrine, and other books of that nature, and if you understand how geopolitics works, what they do is they go to these countries and hook or crook, they end up subverting their political processes. And they end up putting favorable dictators, a lot of times that's what they end up being, favorable dictators into power, not giving a damn what those dictators are doing to the local population. So in Haiti, for decades, the United States government backed the right-wing regime of Papa Doc and Baby Doc. Okay, and these guys ruled for decades, committed all sorts of human rights atrocities. And when people tried to rise up, when people tried to speak out, they were put into secret prisons, they were killed by secret police. And this was done with the United States' knowledge. Not only was it known what they were doing to the local Haitian population, okay, but it was also known that they were stealing from the country itself. They were stealing from the government. And people have the nerve to look at Haiti today and wonder why it's impoverished. And they refuse to look at the role the United States government has played in that, the hand the United States government has had in that. Okay, but, you know, that's a level of historical context to a very complex situation. Okay, something that you're not really going to see echoed too much in the mainstream news. And something that you're not going to see any of these black collaborators admit to, because that's not their job. They're collaborators. Their job is to give political cover. But if we're going to be different, if we're going to be better than them, then we have to speak on realities and speak on truths that they refuse to speak on. And they do the same thing in Africa, which is what I was talking about a second ago. So not only do they prop up dictators, by the way, the reason they propped up the dictators in Haiti was because they were right-wing and fascist and anti-communist. They were anti-Castro. So the United States government turned a blind eye to all sorts of atrocities purely just to back an anti-communist regime, dictator regime. You look at Africa, you look at all of the dictators in Africa who have been propped up by Western powers. Okay, so what we have to understand as African Americans in this country, okay, is that we are not outside of the ability to be used in that way. They can very much do the same thing to us that they've done to Africans and Haitians and every other group of non-white people around the world. Okay, and you're seeing it right now, and it's what they do when they put people like Denard and Burns into positions of power. That's their job. They don't call them leaders, but understand what their function is. Their function is to speak from a position of authority. That's what leaders are supposed to do. That's what representatives are supposed to do. Now, of course, obviously, you have the leftists and the progressives and the liberals who are on television as well, and they constantly go back and forth with the Denards and the Burnses of America, and that's good. So there is a counterbalance. I know that Burns and Denard are not the only ones on television, okay, but they have a very subversive presence within the community right now, and we have to understand that an important element of white supremacy is propping up fake black leadership. That is fundamental in white supremacy, because they prop these people up and they allow them to corral the rest of the community. And you never know, like long term, what could be a minority opinion could become a more widely held belief if these types of people are allowed to fester and subvert the energy in the community as much as they are trying to do. And if they consistently are allowed to do it, that may actually happen, because you can't assume that people are going to know better. Now, I was mentioning Trump's shithole comments a second ago, or a few minutes ago, not a little second ago. And I made a video about it yesterday. It's up on my YouTube channel, and I might link to it below in the description box. And I said earlier in this video, we shouldn't fall into a particular trap. And that trap is allowing white supremacy to put your guards down and make you fall for the okie doke. Because one of the other things that these fake black spokespeople, one of their other jobs is to dissipate the energy, okay, and to put the energy to put the onus on something else other than what people are actually outraged about. And I guess it's time to now segue into Trump's shithole comment, because, and I'm not going to necessarily focus on the comment because I already made a video about it, but I have noticed a certain type of reaction. So usually in a lot of these cases, you have the outrage itself, right? And then you have the reaction to the outrage. So I guess you can say like the counter outrage. And the outrage, a lot of times, sometimes people get outraged about things that I don't think are as outrageous as people are making them out to be. And then other times I think the outrage is justified. And the outrage over Trump's shithole comment is justified. It's completely justified because it's highly disrespectful. It's not unexpected, but just because something is unexpected and to be expected doesn't mean that people shouldn't get outraged about it either. So somebody that I follow who has a lot of really good ideas that I believe, and I think he gets a lot of stuff right, is Ben Dixon, and he made a video that's on his channel. His YouTube channel and he was talking about how the conversation around race and around Trump and around some of these topics, the conversation is kind of devolving. Okay, and what he meant by that is people are becoming kind of predictable in their reactions. So the outrage, even though it's justified sometimes, and it's even justified in this case, the outrage is predictable. But then too, the counter outrage has also become largely predictable. And the okie doke that people are allowing themselves to fall into is to say that, okay, well, since we knew Trump was racist, because you can write a book on Trump's racism. He's been saying racist things for years, not including the stuff he said when he started running for president. Since we've seen racism before, and we've even heard and seen past presidents do and say racist things, and not just presidents but governors and things like that. The implication is, why are people getting outraged when this is what this country is all about? I've heard some liberals say that, well, because this helps Trump with his base, why are we talking about it? We shouldn't be talking about it this much because it helps him. I've heard people say this is a distraction. I've literally read several articles, and seen several people make YouTube videos talking about the inherent racism of Trumpism, which is essentially what this topic of discussion is about. Talking about this inherent racism of Trumpism is a distraction. So you have the outrage and you have the counter outrage. Both are equally predictable, in my opinion. Now, don't get me wrong, adding historical context to America's historic white supremacy should be done, because people need to be reminded that not only have racist things gone on in this country for a very long time, but they've quite frankly always gone on in this country. And that's not really news to anybody. I think though, people need to understand that having a president that wears his racism on his sleeves, okay, as much as Trump does, I'm not talking about mayors, or sheriffs or governors. I'm talking about the president of the United States. Having a president that wears his racism on his sleeves as much as Donald Trump does, and as consistently as Donald Trump does, is not a common thing in American political discourse. Okay, so while we can talk about racist, policies of previous administrations, certainly the Reagan administration, certainly both Bush administrations, certainly the Clinton administration, we can talk about the racist policies all day long. And I'm there with you guys. Trust me, I am. Okay, I talk about a lot of that stuff myself, and I've written about a lot of that stuff myself. Whether you're talking about the drug war or mass incarceration or 3 strikes and you're out, whatever the case, whatever it may be, like, trust me, I know. Okay, but people are justified in seeing what this country is devolving into, okay, and being outraged by it. I don't think that's an irrational reaction to what's going on right now in this country. So I'm trying to see it like both ways from both perspectives. I'm trying to see it from the perspective of people who are outraged, and I actually consider myself part of that group, because he's not just talking about one person, or he's not even just talking about one group, one ethnic group. This dude is literally talking about hundreds of ethnic groups. He's talking about the entire African continent. He's talking about all black people. Y'all gotta understand when he says Haiti in Africa, that's damn near what, 3/4 of the entire global black population. You can't insult that many black people and not expect an outraged reaction. And think that, lobbing out a lot of whataboutisms and what about what Obama did. Look, Obama and Clinton certainly are not perfect politicians. I've criticized both numerous times. Some people that have seen, some of my other videos and have read some of the stuff that I've written before, have seen some of my tweets. You guys know I've criticized Obama. I made a whole video about Libya where I was criticizing Obama. Okay, so I know their hands are not clean, and I know both of them have done things that have been detrimental to black people. But here's the thing, folks. Obama and Clinton are not in office right now. This is the point that people are just missing. Okay, you have to live in the moment. It is important to live in the moment. In the present moment, in the current day, the white supremacy that we are dealing with is not coming from Democrats. It's not coming from the DNC. Okay, I'm not gonna go there. It's not coming from basically other people other than the President of the United States, primarily. Now I'm talking about people in power. Now you might want to bring up local politicians and local officials and judges and things like that. And that's true too. But you can't compare any of those to a man who has as much power as the President of the United States. The power of most people dwarfs in comparison to the power of the presidency. Okay, so when he says really reckless things, some people say, okay, that's just rhetoric. Why are you guys getting so offended? Why are you guys getting so bent out of shape? It's just rhetoric. It's just words. Yeah, and words lead to action. So I'm not just worried about his words. I'm also worried about the things that he is going to do to reinforce those words and to reinforce those opinions. So again, people are justified in being outraged. Because what people who are outraged are thinking to themselves, okay, where is this going to lead down the road? What might he actually do that could... Well, we already know what he could do that'll actually hurt Haitians. I made another video about how the temporary protected status, the TPS, for Haitian immigrants is being canceled. And not just Haitian immigrants, but immigrants from El Salvador and I think one other country as well. But definitely Haitians and about 200,000 people from El Salvador. Okay? So this is direct proof right here of racist ideas leading to racist action. So when people are outraged, it's not so much they're outraged about the words, they're outraged more so about what those words will lead to. And this is very important for people to keep in mind. When people are trying to deflect and talk about Obama and Clinton and things that Obama and Clinton did, okay, which is not pertinent right now. And instead of living in the moment and acknowledging the white supremacy that's in front of you, people want to bring up white supremacy from 20 years ago and shit like that. Like we can talk about that stuff from a historical perspective, and we can talk about the role that those racist policies and racist ideas have had on black people down till today. But the present threat we are facing, the present white supremacist threat we are facing, is coming from who. And it's coming from more so than him, it's coming from a lot of the people he inspires. Because that's another thing. There are all these far right people, all of these right wingers, all of these racist neo-Nazis who are going ham right now against law enforcement. Sean King has been talking about it. I constantly see it on my Twitter feed, all like one after another. Like they are being riled up. And you have several terror plots that have been foiled where white supremacists have tried to blow things up, and none of this stuff is getting media coverage. You see, this is the problem I have with this debate, and this is the problem. This is the reason why people are getting outraged. People are getting outraged because they see that Trump's rhetoric and the white supremacist rhetoric that is coming from the White House today is directly leading to violent action in the real world. You actively have people plotting to do terroristic things to black people, to brown people, because of the crazy person that's in the White House right now. So let's stop. Like I understand people want to add historical context. I get that, and I'm not knocking that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Okay, but if every time people get outraged about something, you feel like it's your job to be counter to that. I don't know if it's just to stand out because you want to be against the grain. It's kind of in vogue and it's kind of trendy to look like you're being contrarian. I don't know what it is, but people are justified in their outrage, and it's because of stuff that you do not see getting talked about a lot. You aren't hearing about these people that Trump is inspiring. Hate crimes have skyrocketed. Okay, violence against police has skyrocketed. And guess what? It's not coming from black people. It's not coming from fictional BIEs. It's coming from a lot of these far-right extremists and white supremacists. They're the primary ones doing it. So the thing that we are dealing with is that we're not just dealing with Trump himself and his rhetoric, but even worse than Trump, we're dealing with the people that he inspires. Okay, and that's why I'm not going to be critical of people who are outraged, because, and honestly, to an extent, and I don't think all people mean it this way, because I know some of the reactions that I've seen are from people that I know don't like Trump, and they will readily admit that Trump is a racist. So I'm not saying people who are saying what I'm about to say are bad people or that they're doing it for malicious reasons. Some might be, but I don't think the majority of them are, from what I've seen. But there's this almost, when it comes to the counter outrage, okay, to the shithole outrage, the counter shithole outrage, it's almost as if some people are becoming defensive to Trump being called a racist. So everyone who's saying things like, were you outraged when Obama dropped 26,000 bombs on those countries in 2016? Are you outraged by 130 kids dying every year in Yemen because of Obama? Like Obama, Clinton, Obama. And this is like, I want to say like the fourth or fifth time, and that's probably just me forgetting all the other times. This is at least like the fourth or fifth time that I can recall, like just on the top of my head, where people have made these whataboutism arguments. Obama is not in power right now. None of those things that Obama did were good, by the way. I've said before, Obama had a terrible foreign policy. Terrible. Okay, I have no bones admitting that. I get repetitive when I say I voted for Obama 2 times. I say that because I want people to know that I was an Obama supporter. I was a Democrat back during the Obama, the beginning of the Obama years before I became an independent. Okay, so what I'm saying about Obama isn't coming from a place of hatred for the man. He just had a terrible foreign policy, and that needs to be acknowledged. And I don't have a problem with people acknowledging that, but people are doing that. People are acknowledging the Clinton Foundation and stuff that Obama did as almost like this. Just from my perspective, I could be wrong about this. Like I said, I don't think everybody is necessarily being malicious when they're doing this, though some might be. But I'm not going to say who I think is and isn't because I don't really have proof. It's just my perceptions. But it's almost as if people are bringing that stuff up as a way to distract themselves. So they say all of this shithole stuff. Oh, this is one big distraction. It's a distraction. Well, when you bring up Obama and Clinton, who aren't in power anymore, and you use things that are problematic things that Obama and Clinton did as ways to counter argue the outrage, the shithole outrage, are you not yourself deflecting? Are you not yourself distracting? That's a form of distraction itself, honestly, if we're keeping it real. Bringing up Obama and Clinton in the face of Trump's racism is a deflection. And like I said, I don't think people are doing it. I keep saying this. I don't think people are doing it, with malicious intent. And I do think historical context is important, but we have to live in the moment. We have to face what is in front of us. Obama and Clinton are not in front of us. They are behind us. Their era is over. Their era is gone. We are dealing with Trump right now. We're not dealing with Obama. We can certainly bring up Obama's problems, but not as a way to. It's really kind of defensive. Like certain people are coming off as a little defensive of Trump, and some of these people are people who, you would think are for the black community, and they I think for the most part they are for the black community. I don't think they're anti-black community or anything like that. So, but I think people have to be mindful not to fall into that trap. Sometimes being counter outrage, especially when the outrage is kind of stupid, that's understandable. Like if people are being outraged a lot of times about something, that doesn't really affect people, that's one thing. But this is not that though. Being counter outraged to something like that or outrages like that is one thing, but being counter outraged to blatant white supremacy, I don't really think people are realizing exactly how that kind of protects Trump and kind of helps the normalization process go a lot smoother. Because what's going to end up happening is, and I don't want this to happen, but what's going to end up happening is Trump is going to continue to say outrageous things more and more and more, and it's going to become more and more outrageous. And people are just going to continue to get numb to it. And I can tell people are already becoming numb to racism and white supremacy. And you shouldn't allow that to happen, because this is something that does affect your lives. And before I end this video, I do want to get into a discussion very briefly about how do you balance outrage and action. And this is what I think fuels a lot of the counter outrage sentiment, because at the end of the day, it's just outrage. There's no action behind it at all. It's people just posting on Twitter and posting on Facebook and things like that, posting on Instagram, and nothing's actually being done following through. And this is something else I have with the counter outrage. Very rarely do you you actually see solutions to the counter outrage. So people will say, yeah, we knew this. We know Trump is a racist. We know he said racist things in the past. Look at what all these other people have done and said racist in the past. But it kind of ends there. You know what I'm saying? How do you balance outrage and action? What needs to be done to not only get Trump out of office, but to make sure someone like Trump isn't allowed to become president in the future? And that might be tough because people can lie. I have my answers, and I know for a fact some of these answers, some of the people who some of the videos I've watched from people who are counter outraging, they also happen to be some of these people who tell other black people not to vote. I think it's strange to be for the black community, but be counter to the outrage of white supremacy, conversely, while you are telling black people not to vote. Those are just some strange, things lining up. Like, I think if you understand how racist Trump is, you should be telling people to vote. And I'm not saying voting is the only solution. Okay, but it goes a long way, definitely, especially when we talk about getting Trump out of power. But, so that's one action, but what are some other actions? I think there needs to be some true community building with immigrants. Something else that I'm seeing a lot that I find kind of disturbing is the anti-immigrant sentiment in some elements of the black space online. And this outrage, this shithole outrage, kind of exposes why that anti-immigrant stance that some black people were taking was a bad idea. Because this shows you right here that black people are very much being targeted right now on the immigration front. Not just, DACA recipients, not just, really all non-white immigrants. So we have to call this out, and we have to fight for, how can I word this? We have to show our support, right? While at the same time trying to fix things in our own community, we have to show support to outside groups, because we're all under attack right now. So thinking that we can take this stance that is very similar to the stance that white supremacists are taking, this anti-immigrant stance, where we're telling these other communities that, you're on your own and black people shouldn't, say anything, even a 30-minute video, you can't even make a 30-minute video about why, the attacks on immigrants is wrong. No one is telling you to give half your life savings to the immigrant cause. No one is telling you to even go protest. It can be something minor. It doesn't have to be something big. It doesn't have to be something, that takes a lot of time and effort. Okay, but voicing your support is important because black people are being attacked too. And if you are about the black community, okay, which I am, okay, I'm about all black people. Black Americans, Africans, blacks in the Caribbean, blacks in South America, blacks in Europe. Yeah, I'm a Pan-African like that. I support all black people, and I think all black people should support other groups of black people. So one of the actions that we can take is building bridges with groups of other blacks in the diaspora. So building bridges with Haitians, building bridges with blacks in the Caribbean, other black groups in the Caribbean, building bridges with blacks in South America, blacks in Africa. Dude, we have to become more universal in our understanding of white supremacy and racism. Because what some people want to do is some people only want to focus on black Americans without really giving a proper context to what's going on to other groups of black people around the world. But outrage has to come before action. You have to know what you're fighting against, before you can begin to make moves against it, before you can begin to plot against it, before you can begin to figure out a way to bring down the systems of oppression that you are facing. You have to be outraged about something first. And so what theoretically could happen is solutions actually aren't presented and solutions aren't made because so many people are fighting to not be outraged. So many people are refusing to live in the moment and instead want to live more so in the past. And instead of fixing the problems for the future, you've basically become numb to what's going on in the present because of what's happened in the past. You've allowed yourself to allow white supremacy to okie doke you, and you've kind of internally normalized it at that point. So you won't actually do anything about it. That's why you fight against normalization, because when you don't accept something as being normal, you fight against it. If you accept something as being normal, I'm not gonna say you won't fight against it, but you won't fight against it as hard as somebody that doesn't want to normalize it and doesn't want to see it as normal and doesn't want to become desensitized. I don't want to become desensitized to racism. That means I'm not going to do shit. That's how some people have to look at it. Sometimes you have to allow yourself to be outraged in order to create action. So that's all I wanted to say about this. Don't allow fake black spokespeople propped up by the white supremacists to pull wool over your eyes and put you to sleep and make you fall for an okie doke. Okay, and don't allow the desire to stand out and the desire to look like you're making this greater point, by being counter outrage. Don't allow that to indirectly put you to sleep either, and indirectly think that, well, since racism has always existed, it's always going to exist and there's nothing I can do about it. Because if you have that mentality, then you're not going to fight against it as effectively as you can. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell underneath this video to be updated whenever I post future videos, and follow my blog at www.blackandintellectual.com.